Welcome back to our final decimal lesson. I cannot believe that we have made it all the way through decimals and this is our final new material. Today we're going to be comparing decimals. Remember that when we compare any kind of numbers, we use the less than, greater than, or equal to symbol. So that's what we're going to be shooting for today. When we're comparing decimals, we have to really think about them. If I were to give you a number like 7 and 10, you would know that 10 is bigger than 7 because you've been dealing with those numbers for a long time. Comparing numbers even into the thousands is pretty easy for you. Up into the millions, I might be able to trick you just because you have to look at so many numbers, but you guys are really good at figuring those out, and you're going to be great at decimals too. We just have to make sure I can't trick you with a couple things. So we're going to start out our first problem. We're just going to look at some tenths, and this one's pretty easy to start with. So if I had 3 tenths and 7 tenths, well, this is not too bad. This is 3 dimes or 7 dimes. Well, they're both tenths. It's pretty obvious that 7 tenths has to be bigger. If I were to write these in fraction form, 3 tenths, 7 tenths, they both have the same denominator. They're both in the same place value. 7 is bigger than 3. So in a case like this, it's not too difficult because we are using the same place value. Same thing as if I go to the hundredths and I'm using a number that is only in the hundredths, it's not too hard to compare them. So if I had 8 hundredths or 2 hundredths, well, this is like 8 pennies versus 2 pennies. If I wrote it in fraction form, it would look like this. Maybe this will help some people if I do it in fraction form. I have my denominator is the same. Which one has more? 8. So that one's not too bad either. Where we run into some trouble, actually let me give you one more of those just so I'm not skipping something. I don't want to go too fast and mess something up. So let's try one more. What if I did 18 hundredths and I did 27 hundredths? Well, this time I don't just have a digit in the tenths place or the hundredths place. This time I have one in each. Well, we can still think of these as pennies, or we could turn them into fractions. 18 hundredths versus 27 hundredths. This goes right back to our fraction lesson from earlier in the year. I have a common denominator, so if I were to draw a fraction bar or a circle and put 100 pieces in it, which one would I shade more of? The 27. Think of it as money. In fact, my golden rule for today is always think of comparing decimals as comparing money. 18 cents to 27 cents. I definitely want the 27 cents. So now here is where we start getting a little tricked. If I were to give you a number like 2 tenths or 17 hundredths, when fourth graders look at this, they sometimes look at it and say, oh, 17. 17's bigger than 2. Because we're using what we've known and what we've done for all these years prior to learning about decimals. We know that 17's bigger than 2, but that's not what this problem actually says. This problem says 2 tenths. This is 2 tenths. 17, and that'd be the same thing as 20 cents. 17 hundredths would be 17 of these little boxes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. So while these two numbers are close, 17 hundredths is actually a smaller amount of the box than 2 tenths. Okay, that could be really easy for you to understand, or it might just be boggling your brain. It just depends on how your brain learns. One of the easiest tricks that I've taught fourth graders in the past to do is to take these numbers and give them the same number of digits. 17 hundredths has 2 digits. It has a digit in the tenths place and a digit in the hundredths place. Go back to the 2 tenths, and if you remember from previous lessons, we can add a 0 after the 2 tenths. We can put a 0 in the hundredths place. That didn't change anything. I could have colored in 2 boxes on this grid, or if you'll excuse me coloring in a different part of this one, That is the exact same amount if I colored in 20 little squares. So 20 hundredths, that'd be 20 pennies, is the same amount as 2 dimes. They're both 20 cents. So if we start changing this in and making it look like money, or just making sure that they have the same number of digits, all of a sudden our brain can say, whoa, check that out. That looks like 20. That looks like 17. This one is definitely bigger. If it helps you, we can't compare it like this because my denominators are not the same. You can change this by multiplying both the numerator and denominator by 10 into a denominator of 100. Look at that, 21 hundredths. That's where we got that from. So if you want, you can do it that way. Or you can simply turn this into money. I think when we're comparing decimals, the easiest way to do it is to think about money. So let's do one more of these to see if I can make sure this is clear to you before we go on to practice, because these are the tricky ones. All right, so this time I'm going to do 72 hundredths or 9 tenths. Now don't let your brain trick you by saying 72 is bigger than 9, because these are not the numbers 72 and 9. This is 9 tenths. This is 72 hundredths. So if I'm going to use my easy trick, this number has 2 digits in it. I need to make sure this number has 2 digits. Does it hurt anything to put a 0 here? No, it does not, because 9 tenths is equivalent to 90 hundredths. 9 dimes is the same thing as 90 pennies. Remember, I'm telling you one of the easiest ways to do this. Well, one of the easiest ways is to make sure it has the same number of digits like that. The other way is to write it like money. This is 72 cents, not quite 3/4. This one over here, and I'm a little out of room, is 90 cents. Which one would you rather have, 90 cents or 72 cents? 90 cents. It's larger. All right, I do have one more. I thought of one more that I could possibly trick you with, and it's not fair for me to give it to you unless I teach it to you first. Okay, let's try this one. I want to do 5 tenths or 50 hundredths. Okay, once again, don't let your brain trick you. Don't think 50 is bigger than 5. I'm going to use my little easy rule of I have 2 place values, 2 digits. I must make sure this one has 2 digits. I can easily add a 0 without changing the amount. This was 50 pennies. This was 5 dimes. 5 dimes and 50 pennies are equivalent. They're the same amount. They're both the same. All right, head on over to the practice and let's see if I can trick you with some of these hard ones. Don't let me do it. I know you can do it. Remember, either add 2 place values, make sure they're the same there, or turn it into money. Don't let me trick you on them.